I'm Kyle Malnati, your host of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. At Calibrate, we exist to help people create generational wealth through real estate. My personal mission is to encourage, empower, and educate you by sharing best practices from business leaders that are proven winners.
Broadcasting from the Mile High City, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast. Our esteemed guest expert today is Heather Dreves. Heather is Director of Funding at Secured Investment Corporation. We're going to have an awesome conversation about non-owner occupied investing, single family, 1 to 4 unit stuff. Heather is a specialist in raising capital, helping finance those types of deals and doing it in what we would think of as a non-traditional way. It's not a bank. We're going to have a conversation, which I think is really exciting, about self-directed IRAs and 401ks. Heather, thank you for joining us on the Calibrate Real Estate Podcast today.
Oh, thank you. It's a big honor to be able to be on here with you, and we're just excited to share the opportunities that we offer.
Well, our Calibrate audience is, for the most part, real estate brokers, and we're out there helping a lot of people go through the process of buying and selling real estate. A lot of people might be doing that on the residential side, owner-occupied, but they may want to think about how to invest for themselves. And I think when we've got a lot of real estate agents that don't have W-2 income, a lot of us are 1099 individuals out there, we may need to seek non-traditional ways of acquiring real estate so that we can invest for our future. You know, we don't have a pension fund a lot of times. We may have a self-directed IRA or a SEP IRA, or there may be different ways that we've been investing for retirement. And we've got this access to real estate. It's the area of the business that we know the best. And so if we want to invest for ourselves, what are some things that you would talk to a realtor about how that might be able to take that old 401k that they had at an old company that they then rolled over into an IRA? How could they use that to actually help invest in real estate?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's a very common topic anymore, depending upon whether we're talking about people trying to passively invest or brokers and things of that nature. And to kind of back it up, I mean, our company got started educating people how to find those deals. I mean, I think a lot of real estate agents have a leg up, and they a lot of times find these off-market deals, you know, before they even hit the MLS, which is great. But what we were finding was so many people had these deals but didn't have the funding for it. And on the other side of our business, we had people with capital that wanted to deploy it, but couldn't find a home for it. They were looking for more non-traditional ways outside of the stock market. So 9 years ago, when I came on board, it was evident that, you know, we had these 2 different types of clients, and it was a perfect match, right? We work with a lot of agents, brokers, full-time real estate investors that are looking to create wealth for themselves outside of their family, regardless of whether they have pensions. We all know just having a day job is not going to get yourself ahead and your family ahead in this market right now. But there is a lot of opportunity. And we believe, and we work with so many clients that have these IRA accounts, or what's really common is old 401ks from 5 employers ago that they never did anything with. And just in full disclosure, we're not an IRA custodian. However, we're very familiar with working with those types of accounts, and there is opportunity to roll those accounts so that you don't have any tax penalties, and they continue to be a tax deferred account. But you can passively invest, you can buy trust deeds, you can invest in real estate funds. You also can actually buy real estate inside your IRA. We are a lender for those types of deals, and we can provide the funding. It doesn't mean, you know, you're buying $100,000 piece of real estate that you have to have $100,000 in your IRA. There are strategies where you can borrow money, continue to keep it as your IRA as the owner, and create wealth through a tax deferred strategy. And we do that here at Secured Investment Corp.
It unlocks a lot of equity that I think most people, when you worked at a company years ago and you've got a sum of money and it continues to grow, you feel like, I can't really touch that until I'm in my mid 60s or my 70s. And it gives you the ability to now invest with some funds that you had from a previous employer, or maybe like we were talking about it could be your IRA if you're a 1099 individual. And it enables you to invest in an area that you're passionate about, that you learn a lot about, and it's pretty exciting stuff. I've got to pause for just a moment and kind of link our missions together. So the mission at Calibrate Real Estate is that we exist to help people create generational wealth through real estate. That's our mission. It's become phraseology for us. And I love, as I was reading about you, Heather, before we got started, is that you're passionate about helping self-employed entrepreneurs and their families build wealth and succeed in their business ventures. And I just feel like those are so linked together. What got you on that journey of working with the entrepreneur and the self-employed individual?
Right. Well, my journey was interesting. I got into the private lending space over 15 years ago, just by chance. I knew somebody that worked for a private lender locally, and he was gracious enough to bring me in and teach me. I learned from the ground up. I mean, I started as a loan officer's assistant. I did escrow. I had a securities license. So I feel like I gained this knowledge just by starting from the ground up, right? And what I quickly found was it was so exciting. I mean, people I'm helping passively invest, whether that's through trust deeds or funds, are creating wealth for their families. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I work with that have these IRAs, self-directed IRAs and 401k accounts, that they're at an age where they can start drawing and they live off of their earnings. They're earning on average about 10% on their monies with us, and they're retired, they're traveling all over. I've recently started working with a lot of dentists. Dentists have a lot of wealth, but they typically work a lot. And so they're also looking for somewhere to passively create wealth and replace their income once they sell their practices. So I think just being able to help these families create wealth for themselves, and it's gave me a whole new view on it for my family. I would have probably never got involved with real estate like my husband and I are had I not got into the private money space. We've got a 23 and 21-year-old, a college soccer player, and a fireman in our family, and they've helped us flip houses, and they're seeing, the potential. So I think just helping families be free financially and prepare them for retirement and leaving a legacy for their families is the most gratifying thing that I do here.
Okay, Heather. So if I've got a realtor that is listening into this podcast and they're thinking, all right, I maybe either have an IRA or a 401k, or I have some clients that do, and maybe that unlocks some deals for me to work on. What are a few things that you need to know from them to kind of get the process started?
Absolutely. So on the lending and the funding side of things, where we're providing the funding maybe for this agent or their clients, if they're buying a non-owner occupied property, we can help with the funding. Our parameters or our credit box are going to be single family 1 to 4 units. That's our niche. And we lend nationwide. So if this agent has an individual that is potentially buying a property in their IRA and needing funding for that, we can provide that as long as it's non-owner occupied, single family 1 to 4 units. And we're really what we refer to ourselves is a bridge lender. We're there to provide the funding to buy the property. We'll even provide the funding for the rehab if need be. And then typically our borrowers exit our loans by selling the property. And some, the rental market's hot right now too. So we also have a 30-year rental product that they could refinance into. So that's more, if they're going to be an active investor and they're needing funding to buy those deals, that's where we can help fill that void. On the other side of it, agents deal a lot with people that are, the market is great. So people are selling their house. They are taking advantage of the market right now. Some of these people are walking away with some cash. We could also help them passively invest that money. If they're not really wanting to be an active real estate investor and they really just want to put their money to work for them, we have opportunities for that. And we do that through either 2 of our real estate funds that we manage. One of them has a minimum of $1,000. There's not anybody out there that can't get started with that, right? And you talked about your guys' vision as a company with Calibrate. Ours is the circle of wealth. And our goal for all of our clients, no matter where they come into our system, is to become an accredited investor. And so we have a real estate fund that has a minimum of $1,000. And there's also opportunity to buy trust deeds. We sell our trust deeds, and you're essentially buying a first lien position against a piece of real estate. You make money because our borrowers make payments every month. I'd say average yields on that are going to be anywhere from 9 to 11% when you're looking at and buying a trust deed. So I guess it really boils down to, are they looking to passively invest, or are they an active real estate investor? But we can help fill those voids for both of those types of investors.
I like the goal of making some of these people grow into accredited investors. It's a term that I know of for sure. But let's park for a second. If someone's never heard that before, what does it take to be an accredited investor? What does that mean?
So an accredited investor, the definition of an accredited investor is defined by the Securities and Exchange. So just in full transparency, it's not our company determining this, but basically you have to qualify one of two ways. You either have $1 million in assets, and that is excluding your primary residence and excluding any liabilities. So I tell people, you could have $1 million in assets, but owe $800,000 in liabilities. So you would not be considered accredited. So $1 million in assets outside of your home, your primary residence, or you can qualify as an accredited investor if you have $200,000 a year as an individual in annual income for the past 2 years, or $300,000 as a married couple for the past 2 years. And you do have to provide evidence of this. And it's interesting. We've had an accredited investor fund I've been with the company 9 years. We opened our first one 8 years ago, and it's been great. I mean, we have a lot of investors in our funds, but we really felt we were doing a disservice to people that weren't accredited. There is no reason that they shouldn't be able to invest in the same type of opportunity as the wealthy, right? So we opened what's called a Regulation A+ fund 3 years ago. And this fund is open to the general public. You do not have to be accredited to go into it. And we lowered our minimum on it. Our other fund is a $50,000 minimum. We wanted a barrier of entry where everybody could get started. You know, I talk to people, I don't have a retirement, I'm 55, I just didn't plan, I don't have enough to invest. Yes, you do. You have to start somewhere, even if it's only with I can't stress that enough, you know, and so we really felt strongly about it. I will tell you, running and opening a Regulation A+ fund is a lot of work and it's very costly. But again, we really felt like we were missing the boat and doing a disservice to our clients and the general public not offering it.
Yeah, I would say kudos to you for trying to bridge that gap, because I think so many people, because of the SEC guideline, are going to go to work with accredited investors. And just by definition, they're going to have more discretionary income to deploy and things like that. So I think it's really, really neat that you're trying to capture people on that beginning of the journey and move them to that point. And
Yep.
What a neat goal to keep track of how many people you cross the threshold into the accredited space. And I think that deserves some accolade and some kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you. We were pretty excited about it. It was a long process to go through the approval, but it's opened a lot of doors for us too, especially people with small IRAs. How many people make the minimum contribution into their IRA every year and they have, $10,000 and they're going, what am I going to do with this? I don't have enough to buy a piece of real estate. I don't have enough maybe to buy a trust deed. And so it was a natural progression for those types of clients, or small 401k balances that are just sitting there. So we've helped a lot of people. We put them in contact with self-directed IRA custodians, got their money rolled over, and now their money's working for them.
Okay, so someone might be sitting in here listening and say, well, sounds really interesting, but they may be kind of missing this point or wanting me to ask this question. Heather, I feel like I've got to ask, why does the private financing or private equity space exist in the first place in this arena? Why do people need this type of service instead of going to a traditional bank?
Right. That's a great topic and great question. And I can speak from personal experience. I mean, there's lots of reasons that the private money space exists. I mean, one, from the passive side of it, you have investors, although the stock market's great right now, people are getting nervous and they're looking to just diversify their portfolio. So I think people being able to invest in the private money space helps people diversify their portfolios, in a space that's backed by either residential or commercial real estate. But I think from the active investor side of thing, and I'm an active investor, when you find that deal and you need to move quick, banks don't move quick. And, in the private money space, I can just tell you, we have multiple investors, borrowers that work with us that are repeat. They've done 10, 15 deals. Once they've gone through our process once and they get the due diligence package to us, the next deal's easier and easier. We have lots of guys that'll call, hey, I got a deal under contract. I have to close in 2 weeks. We can do that. Banks can't do that. The other thing that is our niche is we focus on residential rehab loans. And that means that we will lend to borrowers based off of the after repair value, which is the future value. We can take a deal and we can look at it and say, yeah, that house is terrible and it's only worth $20,000 right now. But we know our markets enough, and we know that if they put $50,000 into that house potentially could be worth $100,000. So we will lend based off of that after repair value. Most banks only lend off of an as-is value. They are not going to look at future value and take into consideration, Kyle's going to put $50,000 into that property and we can see the vision. We do that. And I think that's another thing that is a big benefit with working, not just with us, but with any private lender. They typically will lend based off of an after repair value. We also don't penalize people. If they pay us off in 30 days, great. Hopefully they come back to us for another deal. A lot of private lenders, they will charge prepayment penalties because their opinion is, we want our money out there working and we're not going to lend it out for anything less than 6 months. If we don't get interest paid for 6 months, we're not doing the deal. We do those deals. We don't penalize people for paying off early. We encourage them. Time is money. Every month that goes by, that real estate investor is making less and less money as their holding costs increase, right? And so I think there's a lot of reasons. I would say the biggest reason is being able to lend off of a after repair value and being able to move very quick. So we even have loan products that don't require appraisals right now. So we can move quick. Title, as you probably know, takes a little bit of time, but I would say time and the rehab opportunity is the reasons that most investors look to private lending.
Those are great points to just consider, because I think a lot of people get so geared into this is the way you've always got to do things. And so if you've got an ability to maybe think outside that, or you get a weird deal, but you're like, this great opportunity,
yeah,
you're a very good fit for it. One of the things that we were chatting about before we started our interview is the Secured Investment Corporation is all about education. And you do several trainings, as many as 10 per month, about deal sourcing, rehab properties, figuring out what a scope of work might look like if you're in a rehab project. How do people connect with those courses? What can they expect? How long are they? Do they cost any money? Because I think that would be a really great just entry point for someone that's just sort of intrigued about it as they hear about it on this podcast, but may say, well, I want to get to know this process in more detail.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity too. We have a series of online events. And we have master events that we actually put on at our corporate office, and coming to visit us in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho isn't so terrible either. But COVID, really changed our education side of our business. I mean, we used to do these in person all over the United States. People are busy, people have jobs, they have families. And so, honestly, COVID was good for us. It forced us to reassess our education program. And right now we put on 10 events a month online. So people can sit in the comfort of their own homes. They can, if they're just wanting to dip their toes in it, what I tell people is we have a program called the Funding Tour. And it is just an initial introduction to real estate investing in our company. And it really helps people determine, okay, maybe I want to be an active real estate investor in rehab, or maybe I don't want to be as active and I just want to learn more about how to be an active broker. And so it gives you just kind of a very quick overview. They can all go to a website. It's called the Lee Arnold System of Real Estate. The funding tours are free. They are tuition paid. We do not charge for them. They are a 2-day online event and they're awesome. And for that person that's just really thinking about it, or, someone getting maybe ready to make a career change or retire, it's a great opportunity to dip their toes in it. So they're called the funding tours. Go to the website at the Lee Arnold System of Real Estate, and they can actually just sign up there and then they'll get sent the link. We put on 2 of them a week now. So there's different schedules and different times that they can get involved with that.
Great resources for people to check out, because I think what ends up happening is someone gets all fired up. They hear a half an hour or 45-minute interview, and then they don't know what to do with all that excitement. And so I think that those are good resources to just understand this process in better detail. You had mentioned that you've seen real estate investors succeed and then fail, and that you're committed to tipping the market scale to the side of success for everybody. What are some pitfalls that you see and that you could share with someone that's interested in the real estate investing journey, but may be concerned about that failure side. And I know it's one of those tools that all of us really we want to avoid, frankly, is failure or pitfalls, but it is a necessary evil with the side of success. And so what are some of the failures you've seen real estate investors commonly step into, and what are some things that you hope to help people avoid as they're on their success journey?
The biggest thing that we see is, first of all, there's probably two things. I would say, and the first one isn't even that they fail, they just never really get started, right? They get hyped up about it. They're, watching some HGTV, I'm going to rehab houses, but, it's finding the deals is difficult and it takes a lot of work. And I think that's one of the things that our program will teach them is we have so many strategies. We teach them how to look for out of town owners. We have lists that they can pull and not just sitting waiting for something to come up on the MLS market, right? Really putting the work in and finding the deals and making offers. So I think that's probably one of the biggest shortcomings we see is people just don't do it. They maybe even get the education and then they don't put the work in. It's a lot of work. But as far as the actual investors that end up buying the property, maybe borrowing money from us, the majority of the time, they get in over their head with a contractor. And these are not, some of these rehab projects are very just cosmetic. We teach people to do more of those, not get in and add a second floor. They get in over their head. They don't run the numbers and they're going to add bathrooms and bedrooms because their agent told them that's going to increase the value. But they have no experience rehabbing. And so they partner up with some contractor that takes off with their money. So one of the programs that we teach is a master rehabber, how to find the contractor, how to vet them, how to put a scope of work together, how to hold that contractor's feet to the fire, because typically that's what happens when they fail is, they trusted some contractor, they were trying to be cheap and pay the guy that was going to charge less, fronted him some money, then he took off. And underbidding a rehab project, they don't go in with a good understanding of what it's going to cost to rehab it. A lot of times they try to shave down the rehab project so they don't have to borrow as much money or bring as much money into the deal. And then they find out they're $20,000 short. We will help them, even if they don't go through our education, but they're trying to borrow money from us, we'll look at that rehab because we want them to be successful. We're not here to just lend them money, charge them big fees. We want them to exit the loan and we want them to come back. So there's times where we'll look at a deal and say, first of all, your rehab's not enough. And second of all, even if you had enough in there, you're not going to make any money. There's no meat on the bone. And so I think that's where we can help is we can guide them and say, hey, this isn't a deal, or hey, this is a great deal, and we can help manage their rehab project side by side with them. But typically it's people getting in over their heads on the rehab side of it is the majority of the time is where you see them not succeed.
Yeah, I can see that from a mile away where someone approaches a rehab project or a flip like it's their own house. And they're like, oh, I'd love to have a second story and extra bathrooms. I'd love to do this and not consider the return on investment. So I think having someone that has seen this in mass over countless amounts of deals, that's a valuable source. And you want your clients to succeed, right? You want them to continue coming back. Just like you said, that's the goal is that we want to keep our money going forward. We want to succeed with our clients. And so we provide these educational training so that they avoid those pitfalls.
Yeah. And we find a lot of borrowers and real estate investors get very emotional about the deals. And this is business. Like you said, it's not their home. They're not living in it. You're not going to rehab it to your standards. That was a lesson I had to learn. The first rehab my husband and I did, it took us way too long. We rehabbed it. It was beautiful when it was done, but we made not as much money as we should have had we just done a decent job, not put granite in it. And so like you said, you have to make those mistakes with any kind of success. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning and you're not taking risks. But we would prefer to coach and guide our borrowers so they don't make detrimental mistakes, and they don't have the ability to come back from it. So we meet on a biweekly basis with our draw specialist team, and they update us on every loan that's in some process of rehab. And then that way, if we see them having problems and hiccups, we can kind of step in and say, hey, how can we help you? We've partnered people. We've had people that have got in over their head, and we knew someone in Missouri, so we called them and they helped them out. So I believe we have a big community of investors that are really out for the better of everybody, not just themselves. And so that is another benefit working with us.
Heather, it's a great segue to the first of our last 3 questions that I ask all of our guests. So if you're ready, rapid fire, here we go. We'll go through the final segment of our show. And that first question is about the word calibrate. Calibrate is the name of our brokerage company as well as our podcast. And it quite literally means to make adjustments. And of course, we're wanting to do that with experience. You've got a desired result, and then, okay, it didn't work out quite the way that you thought. So you're going to make an adjustment now for a better outcome next time around. You use this in science a lot, use it in a lot of different experiences where here's my hypothesis, here's what actually happened. So as you make those adjustments, as we make those adjustments, I love to ask each guest on our show how you personally calibrate your life on a daily basis. What are some of the personal hacks? What are some of the routines? What are some of the things that you do that you feel like, all right, maybe I didn't get the result I wanted this week, or maybe I'm just a little off center. How do I calibrate back to kind of excellence?
Absolutely. I think it's so important. I mean, just on a personal level, I'm a big to-do list person. Every night I have my list of things I'm doing, not only for the week, but every day. And then at the end of every day, things I don't get done, those go to the top of the to-do list for the next day. My husband and I have been very fortunate in real estate. And honestly, it's all been because I came into the private money space. We have been able to take opportunities to buy real estate that we probably would have never had, not realizing that there was private money out there. You know, we believe there was just traditional resources like most people do. And I think once you are able to tap into the fact that there is money out there so that you can move quick on these deals, there's opportunity. But my husband and I are constantly looking at that. We look at our portfolio. We own 2 rentals right now, and we're calibrating, thinking maybe we should sell them because the market's so hot here. As far as like a couple, you know, we look at things on a weekly basis with one another. Where are we at financially? What are we going to do? We try not to get too emotionally invested in the real estate projects that we have, because they might be a good rental this month and we might sell them next month. It's business. But I just think keeping yourself grounded and also surrounding yourself by family and friends. You know, that is most important for us as a family. Our family comes first. We're both very involved with our businesses, and, you know, that gives us the ability to spend a lot of quality time with our family. But it's just a constant reassessing. It's like being a college athlete. You almost need coaches around you just to kind of keep you grounded and call you out when you need it and motivate you. And it's not being complacent. I guess that's probably the biggest thing.
So you and I are both in that industry of constantly thinking about how we can make adjustments for our clients. And so it's natural, of course, that you would do that at home. For the person that's listening in, and I can think of my younger self hearing this and going like, a budget meeting with my spouse. We've got 2 different, you know, sets of money habits from long ago, from our parents or whatever, from our upbringing. Like, holy cow, especially if you're newly married, that could be something that is a little bit nerve-wracking as someone would attempt that. So let's step through just real quickly, you and your husband, how you might approach that, how you've gotten good at having these conversations. And you said this, by not being emotional, but being able to really look at it and trying to win together as you both bring probably some opposite thought processes, some opposites, you know, clearly opposites attract. How do you do that? How do you navigate that successfully, Heather?
Yeah, well, I would like to say that's done on a weekly basis, but it's not. You know, we have busy lives, and, you know, I mean, obviously we talk constantly, but it's more on a monthly basis that we sit down and look at where we're at. I wish we would have started doing it a lot earlier, because I think when you're young and newly married and you have little kids, you're just getting by, right? Like, I stayed home with our kids till they were in elementary school, you know, so we made a lot of sacrifices there. But, you know, I think it's really important on a monthly basis to at least sit down and look at your budget, reassess where you're at, and make adjustments as you go. I mean, because nothing ever goes as planned, right? You put these budgets together, and there's always something that comes up. Our son's car just imploded last week. I just plan for these things because it's always something. So, but yeah, I mean, really sitting down on a monthly basis and talking about it. And it's scary, and it's, oh God, he's going to see that I spend a little more in this area, but I think it's really important. And like you said, you bring 2 people together, and you come from different families. My family was very financially secure, but I don't ever remember my parents really talking about it. And I don't remember seeing them sitting down talking about it, and he comes from a completely different family too. So just making sure you're on the same page. And I think doing that allows you and your spouse, or if you're, by yourself, the opportunity to invest and, do things that's going to create wealth for yourself long-term too.
I completely agree. About 8 or 9 years ago, my wife, Courtney, and I went through a personal finance class, several week class. And one of the core tenets of that class was just doing a monthly budget and having that monthly budget meeting, bringing your strengths to it. Someone's naturally going to be drawn towards doing the budgeting, and therefore the other person runs away from that. And it's really funny how spouses, work together or sometimes oppose each other, because you've got this one type, and I heard you say it in the planning part of it, that you've got to make adjustments to the plan because something inevitably is going to come up that isn't to the plan, right? And you've got the person who put the budget together and they're like, all right, this is what it is. It's never changing. I etched it in stone. I came down from Mount Sinai. I have this budget. We're never changing it. And then, of course, life happens. And the other side is that the person is like, well, I know that stuff's going to come up, so why even plan? Let's just live for the day. And it's just such a funny exchange, but you can do it well. And that's something that Courtney and I have done very well. So I appreciate you sharing that, Heather. Our next question, it's a good segue because we've been talking about our younger selves and kind of how to start things off when you just get married or you're younger, is this question, Dear Younger Me. It comes from a song that I really enjoy. And I've dubbed this question, it's not in the song, but I've dubbed it as the advice you wish you knew when you were 22. So the writer of this song is basically talking about how if they could write a letter to themselves when they were younger, this is the advice they would give. So if you could go back in time with a letter from Heather today to Heather, in your early 20s, what's the advice that you'd give to yourself?
I love this. So the advice I would give to myself would be two things. One, start investing in self-directed accounts earlier. I wish we would have done that a lot earlier. I think right now is a great time to get started with that because these IRA custodians have such great education out there. They put on webinars constantly. And so on a side note, if you guys would like any referrals for that, I can give you some names of some really good IRA custodians. And then the second thing I would say to my younger self is to get active in real estate investing earlier. I and my husband built houses when we first were married and did it for somebody else. Had we been fixing and flipping properties 25 years ago, I can't even imagine where we'd be right now. So I would say get active in real estate immediately. If you're not owning a home, get that first home under your belt, and then get active with your self-directed IRAs and 401ks and things of that nature.
Great advice. All right, the final question is actually derived from that question I just asked you, the Dear Younger Me question. So I'm interviewing my career coach in episode 5 of this podcast. We're over 180 episodes now. So this is the very beginning. And I'm talking to Chris, and Chris answers that question with a book. And I'm actually holding the book in my hand. It's called The Principle of the Path by Andy Stanley. And when Chris was in his 20s, he was in a mentoring group where the leader of the group said, hey guys, you got to read this book. And in that book, there's an exercise where the reader is encouraged to write their own obituary. And Chris did that and lived on mission for over a decade because he was thinking of the end in mind. Very tragically, Chris passed away a couple of years ago after that interview. And as a tribute to him, I asked this legacy question. So obviously we all hope that it's decades from now, but at your funeral, if you've got a loved one that's delivering your eulogy and they're expressing all the different things about Heather, what would you hope your legacy would be? What would you hope that they would share with the people in the congregation at your funeral? What would you hope your legacy would be, Heather?
Yeah, well, that's a crazy question. I've heard this brought up speaking with other people. Wow. I mean, I would hope that people would say, or my legacy would be that I was a kind person, that I love my family and friends. But I also would hope that, all these clients that I've worked with for all these years, I would hope that, they acknowledge that I helped them find financial freedom, whether that was for them, individually or creating wealth for themselves to leave as a legacy to their families. I would hope that people appreciate the time and effort we put into that as a company managing their funds in our funds or through our trust deeds. That has allowed them to be financially free. And that's our goal for, that's my goal for me personally and my family and my kids. It's hard to get ahead anymore in these days and times without having these side things that you're doing. And I would hope that my clients would say that too, because we found Secured Investment Corp and Heather, we have financial freedom. And, that can be from both sides of the company, right? That can be through the funding side of it, where we're allowing these real estate investors and providing them with funding, or it's through passively investing with us. So obviously, I would hope that people would say I'm a good person, and I feel like I'm very passionate about my family and my friends. But again, I would hope that people acknowledge and appreciate the time and effort that has gone into managing their money and helping them create wealth and financial freedom for themselves.
I completely agree with you for what it's worth, that one of the things that financial services unfortunately has an issue with is that so much of financial services is intangible. It's very difficult for people to really understand where their money is, where it's growing, and it can be just as simple as a mutual fund where it's like, I don't know what these leaders of the company are doing. I hope that it goes well.
Yeah.
My company gave me a 401k. I ought to probably invest in it. And to be able to, the thing that I was attracted to when I was in college as a finance major is that real estate as a segment of our financial classes is the tangible part of investing. And there are other ways of doing that, of course, but I completely agree with you that the goal of someone in our industry that is helping people create generational wealth through real estate is that you're going to see that grandmother or grandfather with their kids and their grandkids, and the grandkids saying, thank you so much for this leg up that I've had because of what grandma or grandpa did. And it just makes everybody's life a little bit better by having someone that's a guide that can invest and help that person really grow wealth in real estate. So I think it's a very wonderful mission. It's obviously we're linked together with those missions. Heather, I'm so excited that we get to share your message with our podcast audience. If people want to connect with you, if they want to connect with Secured Investment Corporation about some of these classes, what are some of the best ways to do that?
Yeah, so we have a couple different websites I'll give here. If they want to connect with the education space of our company and educate themselves about how to get more active as a real estate investor, I encourage them to go to Lee Arnold System of Real Estate. All of our classes are on there. Like I said, they can attend one free. It's called the Funding Tour. So again, that's Lee Arnold, the Lee Arnold System of Real Estate. If they are looking to be more passive and or also looking for funding, they can come to our website at securedinvestmentcorp.com. Once they get to that website, they're going to be able to get information about the funds that we manage if they're looking to just passively invest. If they want to be a little more active and buy a trust deed, we have all of our trust deeds listed on there. And they can even book appointments with myself and my team. And we can, give them more information. If they're looking for referrals for IRA custodians, we have preferred custodians on our website. We partner with quite a few. Alto IRA, Equity Trust are big ones. But Secured Investment Corp website is going to be their best bet if they want to be on the passive side. If they want to be more active, go to the Lee Arnold System of Real Estate, and we'd love to talk with them. There's no obligation. We're really here first and foremost to educate people, and second, to help provide funding if they're needing it. If it's a real estate agent that's looking for funding for their clients, they can get a hold of me at securedinvestmentcorp.com.
Well, everybody, there's your call to action. If you're interested in learning more about real estate, either actively or passively, check out those resources. Heather, thank you so much for being on our show today. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your energy. And it's just been a lot of fun getting to know more about your side of the real estate industry. I'd like to thank our interview valet folks for setting this interview up. Of course, I'd like to thank our podcast producer, Ann Russell, for getting this show taken care of. And I'd like to thank you, Heather. We had to reschedule a time or two, and I appreciate that. Just the way that real estate works at times. And I definitely appreciate your flexibility. For all those out there listening, thank you so much for downloading our show. Please, of course, remember, if you like our show, if you like this episode, give it a rating in Apple Podcasts. That's our main area of focus. 5 stars are what we're looking for. If you got a 2-star or a 3-star, we don't want it, but a 5-star review is what we're looking for. And I'm just so excited to continue to bring great content like Heather and others out there. So I'm Kyle Malnati, your podcast host. And as I love to say, we will see you around the neighborhood. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you.
Check you out here in a little bit. And thanks so much. Thank you, Heather.